I don't see 4 votes on the city council for that for a long time. I just don't see it. That's
For that example you're
So-
saying with the police station.
So what you're saying or suggesting is that would become formalized some way,
yeah, I'm saying
That
that before ban notes were issued there should be approval from the city council long term, so that we're not spinning wheels.
You, when you issue the long-term debt, you usually have approximately 3 years to spend it all. Okay, so if the council were to issue that long-term debt, say, when we got the X-in-hand property, that would have been over, it would be, at least 2, if not close to 3 years, we would have to spend all that money. The plan was when we acquired that property was just acquire the property, and then we would start the architect, and then once that's done and that's all approved by the city council, then we would issue the long-term debt. Because again, you only have 2-3 years to spend that money. If we issued the long-term debt then, we would not be in compliance.
It'd be an arbitrage.
Yeah, it's called arbitrage. You would not be able to, you would have to pay all
My
that back.
recollection, he just triggered my recollection. I think even when we elected to buy the property, we knew the actual expense of building the building was so far off that getting the long-term debt up front was going to be problematic for us in an arbitrage point of view. So we did a short-term note until such time that we haven't made the decision, unfortunately.
That was the thinking of getting the short-term debt, because eventually that will have to, and that's even written in the bond covenant, that eventually will be written into long-term debt or paid back.
But I think if I could hear, for clarification on this, I think what he's saying is what happens if the long-term debt is never followed through on, the police station comes to a grinding halt, the police station, there's a decision to do something else other than that, we've spent $2 or $3 million that may or may not be recovered. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you saying back as a concern? And where are we then financially with that? No, we can probably sell the property, but we may not be able to sell the property. In the meantime, we've tied up money. Is that kind of what you're getting at there?
Yeah, and one more caveat, I guess, to that is you're running out of time on that ban to go into long-term debt.
And then what's the question would be, now what?
Yeah.
I think we
that's a good
just
question.
re-upped that ban, I could be wrong, for another 2 years.
I thought you did too.
Yeah,
we
just,
did. We passed
we
it.
extended it for another 2 years.
So how many times and how long can you extend that?
And that's something I'm going to have to ask our financial advisor, but he's never told me that you could only extend this, so long. He's actually never told me that, so, but I will find out.
You extend it by making an interest payment.
Yeah, I think what Mac is saying is that the best policy? It may work out, it may not, but is that the best policy to have to borrow short-term debt when you don't really have a long-term capital improvement debt policy plan to pay for whatever it is you're bonding out? And I'm not the financial guy to know what that answer would be, but I think he just brought up a good point. Yeah, Dave?
I think we do have to talk about a policy because we're kind of in a conundrum here. We knew it was going to be 10 years before we built that new police station, but that was premised on, we thought we were building a new city hall for $3 million. We thought the TIF was going to remodel this building in totality for $3 million, and something that we all have to get used to as a fact of life, the council may change every 2 years, and that's what happened. That plan didn't happen. It was supposed to be a 10-year remodel expectation out of this building. I think that was 5 years ago. So we're getting ever so close to, we need to build that new police station. And especially in light of a couple of daylight bank robberies, I think with the phone calls that I've been getting in the last few weeks, the citizenry in this community is expecting us to up our police force and make a bigger presence, make a bigger statement. And I think past councils have decided that it should be on the north side of the railroad tracks. There is a TIF district there. Now, this is something I think that we need to deal with. And if we'd had a policy in place, it wouldn't be a debate. It would be we have to decide by date certain what we're doing now.
Well, but if my recollection on that, I really don't want to discuss the police station now, was that we were one council meeting away from building, if you remember.
Here.
The finance, no, it wasn't. It was one vote away with the finance committee's or the special police department committee to simply add money to the water bill, and we were one city council meeting from that happening, and we decided not to.
Well, that was after we stopped the plans to do it here. I agree it was very, very close, and it came down to what's going on with NIU, and I think the economic times or political times, it was that close. But I think we really should have had a policy in place so that we wouldn't be sitting here now saying, what are we going to do? Sure, it's only 1% on that bond anticipation note, so it's costing us, what, $20,000 a year to hold the property interest-wise, but I don't think that we should be in the business of holding property without a plan.
Tom?
Couple thoughts. Number one, I know this policy, as I understand it, was drafted as the basis and best practices of 5 or 6 different communities. I'd suggest that we revisit this. I think the point is at least a valid question. I think the city manager and company, as I understood it, would have explained to the council at the time the purpose of this and the long-term plan that was built around that. The idea that changed after the fact is troubling and maybe problematic today, but I don't know that anything was done, not according to what was outlined. However, if best practices and the language and the structure of how this should be written, if it needs to be rewritten, I would suggest we revisit that before we bring it back. I think it's something that needs to be investigated. And I don't know that we're going to answer that here this moment, but
You're talking about the short term.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is that the structure of the short term and the sequencing and the commitment to having a long-term plan is something that maybe should be considered as you make that commitment. Are you really making a long-term commitment, or you're leaving yourself an out? In this case, the out is maybe not as easy a condition now under these economic times, but at least you're going in with your eyes open as to what could happen. So I just suggest we revisit the
But
language.
there's
and the
nothing,
time.
what happened, and there's nothing wrong with this, is we made a commitment to long-term finance the acquisition of a piece of property.
Right.
And someday we're going to build a police station. When we bought the property, we had no intention of building it immediately. We didn't. Now, subsequent to that, if you recall, we bought the property, someday we're going to build it meanwhile, as you just, we're going to do something here for a 10-year period, and eventually then secure that property before it was bought out from under us. That was the long-term intention.
Okay.
So we had an intention of long-term financing $2 million.
I thought that was the case. I'm
Yeah.
just saying if we're going to revisit the language here in the suggestion of the Finance Committee in the retrospect of those steps, and that it's clear to the council what's being entered into, if we can clarify that here, that might benefit us all.
Ron?
To me, it just sort of seems logical if that's how it would proceed.
Right. I don't know what else we would change here. is
You
my
would do
point.
short-term financing until you got all your ducks in order and committed and all that, and then you would do your long-term. I don't know how you put that in writing, but I would think that's sort of a logical process. I mean,
That's the way it reads now.
What seems to me what happened was that we need to safeguard so that as the political climate changes every 2 years, that if a commitment is made, and we made the commitment to take care of the police station needs in the interim, which we should already be 5 years into that 10 years of use, and we still don't have our updated police station. If that commitment was made, and if in the future political climate says, let's not spend that money on a short-term Band-Aid, let's do this right, which was the discussion when we decided to go ahead, that should have been a commitment at that point to either do that by a date certain or go back to the plan that we were putting on hold, that was the plan, just put this on hold for a few months while we explore the possibility of going forward. And somehow this should be tied into future bonding, because if you have a long-term plan and you don't do it because you have that plan of waiting 10 years, then there needed to be an immediate fix, or else we never should have bought that property on West Lincoln.